Hey, welcome back to Grit Gym. I'm going to start a timer here because I'm going to finish this one right at 30 minutes this time. I'm going to be off of here by 30 minutes, I swear. All right, so it's Friday, TGIF. I don't know. If you're living for Friday, I think that you probably need to assess some things. I think you probably need to assess some things and look at things and see if you really hate your job. And if that's because anytime that someone hates their job, I always find this really interesting. Like, do you hate your job because your job invites you to just tries to give you that reminder over and over again that you're not enough for the job that you do have, or do you hate your job just because you hate your job? So there's two things to go there for. And if you practice a little gratitude, I think that, and that sounded very condescending, I didn't mean for it to, but if you practice gratitude, if you look at things that you can be grateful for in your job, this was not planned in this talk, because this talk is actually the 5 ways to keep muscle while cutting fat. But if you look at your job, and you look at all the benefits that you get from that job. I don't mean like insurance benefits, but that could be one. You get money from your job. You get a way to leave your house. You get, you start to look at the positives of your job, and it can really change around the perspective of it. And if you can't come up with one positive thing, then you got to look at you first, and then you got to look at your job and see if it just sucks and it isn't something that that you can leave. Anyway, and one of the things that I get on Rach about this. I had a conversation about this the other day with somebody else. Rach is about to start in a coffee shop, so it doesn't really matter to her. But we've talked a lot about this before. But being in an entrepreneur position and being in a position that where you employ other people, it's really easy for us to not realize that we haven't given a raise in a while. It's really easy to just for drivers like me to just be like, no, let's go, because it's not about the money. It's about how many people you help. So. For me, it's really easy to forget and lose sight of things like that. So if you are in a position, please go to your employer and ask them for a raise. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make in the job world and in Grid Gym is just ask for the fucking raise. I realize that money can be this awkward thing, but really it's not. It's an intangible. It's like this pen. This pen has a certain amount of value. That dollar has a certain amount of value. It doesn't mean anything. All it is a pen. It's an intangible object. There's no emotion around this pen. I can use this pen to get really emotional with some writing, or I can get really emotional and toss around my money, or I can look at it like it's a pen, because that's all it is. It's an objective pen. So go and ask for a raise. I encourage everybody that has a job, just go and ask for a raise. What's the worst that could happen? They say no. It's not that bad. The best thing that could happen is they get a raise. If you never ask, the answer is always no. If you never ask, the answer is always, 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 always no. And I almost guarantee you the big reason that they don't want to give you a raise is because they don't want to deal with the payroll tax. So what sucks is that every time that you get, as an employer, every single time that you give people money, you have to pay a payroll tax. So you have to give a lot of money to, it's a lot. To the government. And it's like, God, I'm just so maybe you come up with a different way to do it. So maybe you get an employee vehicle, or maybe you get something like that. You get some other benefit besides money, maybe. I don't know, but go ask for a raise. Anyway, today, the top 3, that was an unplanned thing. But anyway, top ways to keep muscle while cutting fat. Really, it's not all that complicated. You can run through these pretty quick. And really, if you start thinking about it logically, there's 3 on here that are just like, well, yeah, duh. There's at least 2 that are just like, no shit. So the first one is just what keeps muscle, or what builds muscle is probably going to keep muscle as well. So if you're in a caloric deficit, which we have to be able to lose fat, we have to eat a little bit less food, right? So if we're in a caloric deficit and we want to really shed some pounds, summer's coming up. This is like the first nice day that we've had in a while. Maybe, I don't know. Wow, we had one nice day last week. I don't know what I'm talking about. But if you look at the things that build muscle, those are going to be the things that keep muscle too. So lifting is one of the ways that we keep muscle. And you want to keep muscle because the more muscle that you have, if you have you can't get that toned look or that leaned out look or any of that stuff or that really in shape look without a decent layer of muscle tissue underneath your skin. So that's very important. So when you're looking at things from a fat loss standpoint, you're not going to be able to necessarily go as hard as you possibly can when you're in a caloric deficit because your body can't recover as fast. So we have to think about this smart. But we have to lift, and you want to lift at least 2 to 3 times per week. That should be looked at like a minimum. So we want to lift though. We want to keep on lifting as we're trying to lose weight. A lot of people will drop they're trying to lose fat and they will drop the lifting. It's like that's a huge mistake. Not only do you need the strength, you also need the tension on your tissues to be able to keep keep that muscle. Otherwise, you're going to lose all that muscle. You're going to lose all that the amount of calories that muscle requires to operate. So you want to keep on lifting as you're going through, because you want to keep that strength and you want to keep that muscle as you're losing fat, and then you see that nice dense layer of tissue underneath. Besides, the hormones that go off while you're lifting are going to be very important. For one, IGF-1 goes up. IGF-1 is a huge fat burner. People get scared of human growth hormone, but people don't start looking all messed up and growing second cheekbones and having enlarged hearts with human growth hormone until they're actually taking a syringe and stabbing in their ass. So you're not going to, but you're going to increase the amount of human growth hormone. Got like some funky hair going on today. But you're going to increase the amount of human growth hormone going around in your body, which is a huge fat burner. It also pulls the skin closer to your muscle tissue. So it's going to pull your skin tighter, which is going to let you look a little bit more in shape, and it's going to help you look a little bit younger, and it's going to help the elasticity of your skin. All right, so that's lifting. I hope I've made a pretty decent case on lifting and why you should lift even when you're trying to lose fat. That should be your first go-to. This should be your number one thing. If you're not lifting in a fat loss program, I think that you're doing yourself putting yourself at a huge disadvantage by not lifting, first of all, just because you need to be strong. And then you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage in the strength game because you can't keep the muscle. And then you're also putting yourself at a huge disadvantage in the endocrine system game because you can't actually, or you're not going to actually produce the hormones that are going to go, hey, let's burn some fat, let's burn some fat, let's burn some fat. All right, the other thing, I'll get to the other one that's just a no-brainer. I'm going to leave that to the end so it can seem like, oh, wow, a little bit more pizzazz. But the other one right now, number 2, is to keep carbs. This is what we're finding with the extreme low-carb diet, like with keto, with paleo. Not as much with paleo because carbs are still present with paleo in the form of fruit. But when we go to an extremely low-carb diet, now, this works for endomorphs pretty well, but at the same time, what we're finding is that in a caloric deficit on the keto diet, we'll actually lose more muscle tissue than we would if carbs would have been present. That's one of the things we're finding. We're also finding that when we're trying to gain muscle on the keto diet, it's a little bit harder to gain muscle on the keto diet. I think this is coming back to the this has long been known, but it's amazing how much people want to deny science in the world today. In a world where we literally look at, I'll stay away from that topic, but carbohydrates we know have a role in muscle tissue. We know that they have a role in building muscle tissue. We know that if we have more carbohydrates and we combine that with protein, that we gain more muscle tissue. So why wouldn't we use them for this? If you eat if you go on a low carb diet and a keto diet to try to lose fat, you're going to end up losing more muscle tissue and you want to keep as much of that as you possibly can. If we could lose 100% fat and zero muscle, that'd be awesome. That'd be perfect. That'd be like the perfect scenario, right? But it's probably just not going to happen. You're probably going to lose a little bit of both if you're coming at this thing aggressively. And I think that you should go at it aggressive. If you don't go at it aggressive, it's going to be really hard if you don't go at it aggressive and take the action necessary to go for it, you're not going to have the drastic effect that would have spurred on your enthusiasm and your energy and your focus towards this thing. If you just have to drag on and drag on and drag on, that means you're not taking enough action on the thing that you want to do. So keeping carbohydrates, we might decrease them. We're probably going to decrease them a little bit, but we're not going to completely omit them. It's silly. It's really, really a kind of a dumb idea to think that if we don't have carbohydrates in our diet, we're not going to lose muscle tissue because carbohydrates help us build muscle tissue just like in a different way than protein does. But number 2, keep carbs. You might decrease them a little bit, but can you define, Cindy says, can you define the different types of carbohydrates? There's a bunch of different carbohydrates. Really, that's something that I should do on the show sometime is really go through and break through, because people think that carbohydrate equals bread and pasta and that fruits aren't carbohydrates. And that's really silly. Breads and pastas are breads and pastas. And there's carbohydrates. One of the other funny ones that I hear is that beans are a very good source of protein. No, they're not. They're a source of carbohydrate. There's more carbohydrate in beans than there's protein, and the protein in beans is not a complete, doesn't have a complete amino acid chain. So you would have to get it from multiple different sources. But anyway, carbohydrate is just a type. It's just a macronutrient group, just like protein, just like fat. There's different types. When it comes to fat, there's fat that is sitting on your stomach that is like adipose tissue. There's fat that's rolling around in your veins that your body is working on. There's fat. So there's like dietary fat that you're going to ingest. So those are all different in turn. They're the same because they're fat, but they're different in terms of where they are. When it comes to carbohydrates, you have carbohydrates that are floating around your blood. You have carbohydrates that are stuck in your liver that are being stored so that you can use them sometime. There's a certain amount of carbohydrate just stored in your muscle tissue. We have these just sitting around ready for us. And then we also have carbohydrates that are going to come in the form of our food that we really do need. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I'll follow up with it here in just a second. But you want carbohydrates even when you're trying to lose fat to a certain degree. We might decrease them a lot, but we're not going to completely omit them. All right, and then the third thing, we want to keep our steady-state cardio to 1 day per week. We're only going to want to go to 1 day per week. We probably do want to have some form of steady-state cardio while we're trying to cut fat. So if you're trying to keep muscle while cutting fat, you still want some form of steady-state cardio. That would be like jogging for 30 to 45 minutes, or cycling for 30 to 45 minutes. Or anything that keeps your heart rate at about 120 to 140 beats per minute for most people is going to be that steady state cardio that you do want. But we don't want to do it every single day. This is one of the big mistakes I see people make. Is they're like, okay, well, I'm going to start jogging every day. That's a big mistake, huge mistake. If you jog every single day, your body's going to recognize that as something else, and your body is extremely adaptive. So that something else that gave that stimulus says we need to drop some muscle tissue so that we can sustain ourselves. We need to drop some fat so we can sustain ourselves. We want it to just say drop some fat. We don't want it to say drop some muscle tissue. So do you want cardio? Hell yeah. But do you want to do it every day? No. 2 times a week, tops. 1 time a week is going to be plenty. And really, when we go down to the next, so that's number 3. Number 4 is how do we get in? A lot of people call this something different. Like CrossFit has tried to make this thing where they invented this thing, but it's not. It's high intensity interval training, glycolytic training, alactic. It's alactic and glycolytic are the type of training method, and then, or it's not the training method, but it's the medium. And then the method is HIIT, and that's what almost all fat loss programs in the world right now are basically using HIIT. It's HIIT, high intensity interval training, and it's what we use at Grid Gym during the metabolic workouts. It's necessary. You need to have it, whether you're a wrestler, a football player, a mom, a banker, whatever. Everybody needs to be using this on some level. It's one of the fundamentals. But how much do we actually need? Because at some point, this actually impedes our ability to hold on to muscle tissue if we're not getting, and it impedes our ability to lift. So we want to do this about 1 to 3 times per week, but we want it to be so intense that you can barely, you don't really have much left. If you're doing HIIT, if you can do HIIT for an entire hour, you did it wrong. You got to be putting more into it than you are. You might be able to do a lactic training for about an hour, but only if you're taking fairly long rest periods. All right, so that's number 4. So far we have lifting. What builds muscle is going to keep muscle. Number 2, we have keep carbohydrates. We might lower them slightly, but we don't want to omit them. Number 3, we have keep steady state cardio, but don't go hog wild with this thing. Just keep it to 1 day per week. Number 4, we have alactic glycolytic, which is also known as high interval, and is used via high intensity interval training. We want to do that 1 to 3 times per week, but we don't want to go over that. Over that, we're kind of asking for some detriment. And then number 5, the one that's just like, well, no, duh, but I cannot express how big this one actually is, because I think you could do all of these all the 4 above this, get this one wrong, you screw up the whole thing. If you don't do this last one, but you did all the other 4, you're going to make a little bit of progress. But without this one, you won't make tons of progress. And if you did all 4, but you just completely omit this one, you're not going to make any progress. This one is a big, big deal. Everybody brushes over it. Everybody looks at it like, oh, it's just, oh, that's not that big a deal. Like, yeah, of course. And I think that's kind of because it's not prolific enough. It's not like on the crazy spectrum where it's like, like some people come out with these diets or exercise programs like motionless exercise. I remember watching an infomercial of that one time, and I was like, motionless exercise, and the lady was just like all plastic surgery up. She looked like a lion, and it's like, okay, so you mean plastic surgery? I thought it was really funny, but like that's on the crazy spectrum, right? So no one's going to actually buy that thing, and no one's actually going to believe in it. No one's actually going to use it. So it's silly. It's ridiculous. And then you go to the absolutely mundane. That's like, well, cut calories and eat your vegetables. You know, the boring stuff. And no one really wants to buy into that either. But they love to buy into this prolific phase, kind of like bulletproof coffee. That is just such a garbage joke. It's fine. Like if you want to put coconut oil in your coffee, that's cool with me if you like the taste of it and everything, but you don't need, like, we can get MCT oil from other places. We can anyway. It's just a silly way to go about it. But if you get this one thing wrong, and this one thing is not prolific at all, so it won't dance off the page at you and be like, oh yeah, man, like I should really do that. Like it's very boring. It's just like you already know it, and you have, and if you get this one thing wrong, the other four don't matter, and that's that you have to increase your sleep by 1 to 3 hours. By 1 to 3 hours. If you increase your sleep by 1 to 3 hours, all the other stuff just magnifies to an extreme level. You can actually recover from your lift, from your interval training, from your cardio. You can actually, like, because you're at and this is one of the big reasons why it works so well with fat loss diets, is because when you're actually working out this hard, your body doesn't have the calories to be able to recover from your workouts like it did before. Right? So if you can't recover from your workouts near as quickly, what do we got to do? We got to increase our level of sleep. I almost guarantee you that if you were to not change anything about your lifestyle, except going to bed 1 hour earlier in the evening, not waking up 1 hour later in the morning, 1 hour earlier in the evening, that you'll lose fat. I almost guarantee you. If you go to bed at midnight every night and you go ahead and you start falling asleep at 10:30, things will change for you. Things will change about your body. Your fat will start to change. Your muscle tissue will start to change. Your mind will start to change. Things will start to change. And there's a big difference between going to bed at midnight and waking up at 8 a.m. and going to bed at 10 and waking up at 6. Almost everybody should go to bed at 10 and wake up at 6. That's why I say, I don't say it enough on here, but I say it in the gym more often, is every hour before midnight is worth 2 hours after midnight. Multiple studies have come out now that have shown that the earlier that we go to bed to some degree is better than the total cumulative effect of sleep. So most of us are going to do pretty well between 6 and 10 hours of sleep every night, right? But if we can go to bed at 10, we get more out of that sleep than if we went to bed at midnight. So the one thing, if I can say one thing about this last point, because number 1 is lift, number 2 is keep carbs, number 3 is keep your cardio, your steady-state cardio to 1 day per week. Number 4 is keep your high-intensity interval training to 1 to 3 days per week. Number 5 is get that extra hours of sleep, but make the hour come before, not in the morning. Cindy asks, is there such a thing as a sleep coach? That would be interesting. I think there is something called Headspace. It's an app that I didn't really like it because I don't really, it's a meditation app. So it's a guided meditation. I don't really enjoy guided meditations. Maybe it's, I don't like people telling me what to do or not. But you could use that, anything that gets you to go to sleep. I think I've done some other videos on sleep on here. I think never hitting your alarm, never, ever, ever, ever hitting that snooze button in the morning is going to be a big thing. Just laying there, even if you're not asleep, just laying there and trying to relax, even if you stayed the whole night asleep. Like, I think you have to train your body to turn it up and to shut off. So going to bed at that time, even if you're just going to sit there. Reading fiction before bed, static stretching before bed, where you hold a pose for more than 50 seconds, is proven to help people go to sleep. Meditation at some point during your day for 5 to 15 minutes every single day. Some people think that hitting the snooze button and going back to sleep is their meditation. I think that one's hilarious. If that were the case, then you just meditated for 8 hours. But meditation is a huge one for going to sleep. That finding that peace within your mind. And challenging the status quo of you and where your normal goes. Those are my big ones for just right off the top of my head for going to sleep. But if you sleep an extra 1 to 3 hours per night, all those things that I listed above, all the lifting, all the diet, all the cardio, all of that will work so much better. It is going to come down to the amount that you sleep, and that extra hour, do not go, if you wake up at 6 a.m. every day and you're like, well, I'll just sleep until 7, that is not what I'm talking about. If you still wake up at 6, don't try to add your hour by going to 7. Go to bed an hour earlier every night. There are some things that I've tried recently in the last like couple of years. We did get the Illuma Bowl, which I suggest for everybody, so that at night when you're using your bathroom before you go to bed, or if you wake up in the middle of the night, you don't have the stimulus from the eye in your eye from the bright lights. The Illuma Bowl just lights up the inside of the toilet, which is kind of nice. It's only like a $5 or $10 item, and it's kind of fun. But also using something like this, little filtered glasses, so that the eye doesn't hit, or the light doesn't hit your eye in the same way. That's one of the things that I've tried out recently. That I don't know if it works or not. Whether it's placebo effect or not, I don't get migraines as often. Like basically, don't get them when I use these when I'm on the computer a lot, and I sleep a little bit better if I use these after dark. So maybe there's something to it. I'm not totally sure. But anyway, what do I have for time? Holy smokes, we ended this one early. But yeah, those are my top things. You got whatever builds muscle is probably going to keep muscle. Not probably, is going to keep muscle. So you want to keep lifting, but you have to take into account your body's not going to recover near as well because you're not giving it as many calories. And we want to keep carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are going to help us recover. Not everything comes down to protein. The world of nutrition right now, if you scrounge around the internet, you would think that everything is protein. Like, oh, protein. You do think protein is the savior to everything. It's the answer to fat loss, that it's the holy grail of all that is good, or you think that it's killing everybody and that everybody should be vegan. And both of those are inaccurate, just terribly inaccurate, and it does not come down to opinion. Keeping carbohydrates is a good way to keep muscle tissue. We might decrease them a little bit, but we still keep them. Keep your steady-state cardio to 1 day per week. Keep your alactic, glycolytic, and high-intensity interval training type workouts to 1 to 3 times per week, and then sleep that extra hour, but get that sleep by at night, not in the morning. Don't add to your morning. Go to bed an hour earlier. But anyway, that's my top 5 ways to keep muscle while cutting fat. I hope you guys enjoyed. Anyway, please click the share button, send this out to everybody you know, and we'll be back on Monday. Ali is fighting this weekend, which should be really fun if you guys want to come up. I forget what the place is called, but it's in Cedar Rapids. You can get tickets from him. That's how these guys make their money when they're amateurs. Is they get like, I don't know, like $10 every time they sell a ticket or something like that. I don't know. But otherwise, they would make no money off the fight, and they could be going out there to get their faces smashed in, which is kind of a crazy idea, but it's what he wants to do with his life, which is pretty cool. But anyway, so Eric and I and a bunch of the Grit Gym staff and crew are going to be up there tomorrow night. I encourage you guys to come up with us, and it should be a really good time. Last fight, he is the only striker in the whole bunch, which is really fun. But anyway, thanks for being here, guys. Really appreciate it. We'll be back on Monday. See you then.